Trainers have been training older artists to lie and say they were as much as 10 years younger than they were. It's all to sell you records, to sell you a.
Who was partners with L.A. Reid and Babyface in Atlanta, and these guys had this competitiveness. L.A. had a girls group. I bet you don't know who his lead singer was.
No.
Pink.
Oh.
She's the exact same age as Beyonce, and there used to be this battle which group was better. You had Usher, he was the same age. They were all 14 and 15 years old living in Atlanta.
You ever hear something so small, but it completely messes with how you see everything after? Like it doesn't even sound crazy at first. It just sits there, but then later, it starts replaying in your head, and suddenly nothing feels the same. That's exactly what's happening right now with Beyoncé, because for years, her story has been one of the most controlled, polished, airtight narratives in the entire industry. Every detail, every timeline, every milestone, it all felt locked in. But now, one little crack has people looking at everything differently. And the wild part is, it didn't come from some random rumor page or conspiracy forum. It came from someone who was actually close enough to be around it, someone who wouldn't normally be questioned. And people are starting to think he might have said a little more than he was supposed to. Before we even go deeper, go ahead and hit like and subscribe, because this one isn't just surface level gossip. This is the kind of thing that slowly unravels the more you pay attention to it.
Yeah.
Now, Beyonce was born in 1981. I don't know how that picture of her standing up, almost hip high to her mother, happened. Like I said, it was the largest infant I ever seen in my life.
I remember her, it was a small school. I remember her passing through the hallways, and I mean, she was stunning. She was just a stunning woman. But she would sing, I think, during the hallways and walking by. And I just remember, and I'm not just saying this, but I remember saying, wow, that girl is something. And I didn't really know much about her because we didn't have classes, and she was in a different art area. I was a theater major. But she stood out. And then years later in college, one of my other good friends called me and said, open your yearbook and look at whatever page, because I didn't put Destiny's Child was already a big deal.
Right.
I just didn't make the connection because she looked so different. And so for 2 years, I Bills, all of these songs that I thought were great. I didn't even make the connection that she went to my high school.
So here's where things start to shift. Beyoncé's official story has always been clear. Born in 1981, rose through the ranks as a teenage prodigy, became the face of Destiny's Child, and then built one of the most dominant careers we've ever seen. That timeline has been repeated so many times, it almost feels unquestionable. But what happens when small details around that timeline start not lining up? And not in one place, in multiple places, from different people across different years. That's where this stops being random and starts feeling structured. Because when Richard Lawson spoke recently, it wasn't some dramatic call-out or direct accusation. It was subtle, almost too subtle, the kind of thing you wouldn't catch unless you were really listening. But once people clipped it, replayed it, and compared it to everything else that's been said over the years, it triggered something. And now, people are going back, rewatching old interviews, digging up past comments, looking at timelines in a completely different way. And the more they look, the more things feel slightly off. Not completely wrong, just off enough to raise questions. And that's the most dangerous kind of inconsistency because it keeps your mind locked in trying to solve it. For example, there have been multiple moments where people close to Beyoncé described knowing her during certain periods that don't fully match her official age. Not one isolated comment, not one mistake, multiple instances, spread out over time, all pointing in the same direction. And when different people who aren't connected to each other keep telling similar versions of a timeline that doesn't match the official one, that's when it starts feeling less like coincidence and more like something that's been adjusted. Then you have the family stories, which should be the most solid, right? But even those have had moments that don't fully line up. Tina Knowles once told a story about taking Beyoncé to see Michael Jackson.
When Beyonce was 3, I took her to the Triumph tour with Michael Jackson and his brothers.
Wow.
And my friend said, well, if you go to this certain area at the Astrodome, he's gonna come out that way. So I had her out there, it was a group of about 20 people. He walks over, tries to grab her, And she loved him so much, she was just overwhelmed as kids do, and she just started crying, and you know, she wouldn't go to him. But what are the odds of that?
Wow.
And she said then, I'm gonna be like Michael Jackson. And I was like, yeah, okay.
Look at her now.
Look at her now. And I just think that that's how fate and God work.
When she was around 3 years old, describing it as this powerful early moment that sparked her passion for performing. It's a great story, except the specific tour she referenced happened in 1981, which would mean Beyoncé couldn't have been 3 at that time if she was born that same year. Now sure, people misremember details. That happens, especially when you're talking about something decades ago. But then Matthew Knowles comes in, and he tells a completely different story that also creates timeline confusion. He mentioned Beyoncé being around the same age as artists like Usher and Pink when they were all coming up, competing, developing, trying to break into the industry. The problem is, Usher and Pink are older. So how were they all the same age? Again, one comment like that, easy to dismiss. But when you start stacking them together, when you start noticing that the inconsistencies always seem to lean in the same direction, it starts to feel like there's a version of the story that's been cleaned up. And that's where the conversation gets deeper, because Hollywood has always played with age. Not just a little, a lot. There are artists who have admitted to shaving years off to stay marketable, to fit a certain image, to extend their relevance. Others have added years early on to be taken more seriously. It's not even shocking anymore, it's part of the system. But Beyoncé isn't just any artist. Her entire brand has been built on precision, control, intentionality. Every move feels calculated, every detail feels managed. So if something like her age was adjusted at some point, that wouldn't just be a random decision. That would be strategic. And that's what's really making people lean in right now. Because this isn't just about whether she's a few years older or not, it's about what that implies.
Partners with L.A. Reid and Babyface in Atlanta, and these guys had this competitiveness. L.A. had a girls group. I bet you don't know who his lead singer was.
No.
Pink.
Oh.
She's the exact same age as Beyonce, and there used to be this battle which group was better. You had Usher, he was the same age. They were all 14 and 15 years old living in Atlanta.
It implies that the timeline we've been given might not be the exact timeline that happened. And if one piece of the story was shaped, then naturally, people start wondering what else might have been shaped too. That's how these conversations grow. That's how they take over. And Richard Lawson's comment, whether intentional or not, acted like a spark. It didn't prove anything on its own, but it reopened a door that had been quietly sitting there for years. A door people had glanced at before, but never fully walked through. Now, people are walking through it. And once you start looking at everything through that lens, it changes how you hear old interviews. It changes how you interpret certain stories. Even small things start feeling more significant, like the way certain topics are quickly shut down, or how fast corrections come out when something starts gaining attention. That kind of response doesn't calm people down. It makes them more curious, because it feels controlled. And when something feels controlled, people assume there's something worth controlling. But here's the part that keeps this from ever being fully settled. There's still no definitive proof. No one piece of evidence that completely flips everything. Just layers of inconsistencies, moments that don't quite match, stories that feel slightly adjusted. And that gray area, that's where this lives. That's why it keeps coming back. Because it's just believable enough to question, but not clear enough to confirm. And that tension is what keeps people hooked. Some fans brush it off completely, saying it doesn't matter, that it's just people overanalyzing details that mean nothing. Others are fully convinced there's a deeper truth being hidden in plain sight. And honestly, both sides make sense. Because at the end of the day, whether her age is exactly what we've been told or slightly different, it doesn't erase what she's accomplished. It doesn't change the impact she's had, but it does change how people see the story. And once people start questioning the story, that's when things shift. That's when the image starts to feel less untouchable. And that's what we're seeing right now. Not a full exposure, not a confirmed truth, but a crack, a small one. And sometimes, that's all it takes. So now I gotta ask you, do you think this is just a bunch of coincidences stacking up and people reading too deep into it? Or do you think Richard Lawson really did say something that wasn't supposed to land the way it did? Because one thing's for sure, people aren't looking at this the same anymore. And once that happens, there's no going back. And honestly, the way this is unfolding, it feels less like a one-time rumor and more like something that's been quietly sitting there, waiting for the right moment to get attention again. Because once people start revisiting old clips with a different perspective, things hit differently. Lines that sounded normal before suddenly feel loaded. Stories that felt harmless start raising questions. And the more people dig, the harder it becomes to just brush it off completely. That's how narratives shift not all at once, but slowly, piece by piece. So even if nothing ever gets officially confirmed, the conversation itself has already changed something. And sometimes that's more powerful than proof.